What holds a society together when trust begins to erode? When citizens lose confidence in institutions? When political life feels theatrical rather than truthful? When freedom seems to generate instability rather than order? What anchors a community? More than 2,400 years ago, Plato asked a question that still defines political philosophy. What is justice, and can a political order survive without it? The Republic is not merely a treatise about an imaginary city. It is a searching examination of moral psychology, leadership, education, and political decay. It confronts a problem that feels strikingly contemporary. If justice does not shape the character of individuals, no institutional structure can compensate. Tonight, I would like to explore the Republic, not as a utopian fantasy, but as a diagnosis of political fragility, one that speaks directly to modern democracies wrestling with polarization, misinformation, inequality, and distrust. Plato wrote the Republic in the 4th century BCE, in the aftermath of profound political turmoil in Athens. The city had lost the Peloponnesian War. It had endured oligarchic coups. It had restored democracy. Most traumatically for Plato, the democratic regime had executed his teacher Socrates. The execution of Socrates was not merely a legal decision. It represented, for Plato, a failure of collective judgment. If the most philosophically serious man in Athens could be condemned by popular vote, what did that reveal about public opinion, about education, about democracy itself? The Republic emerges from this crisis of confidence. Plato was not seeking a minor reform of institutions. He was asking a foundational question: what must be true about justice, education, and the human soul for political order to be stable and legitimate? At the time, this mattered because Athens was searching for stability. It matters today because modern societies continue to struggle with similar tensions between freedom and order, expertise and populism, truth and persuasion. This dialogue is explicitly concerning justice, and that justice and the state are inseparable according to Plato. Justice is not an abstract virtue, it is the animating principle of political life. The central problem of the Republic is deceptively simple. Why should anyone be just if injustice appears more profitable? Glaucon, one of Socrates' interlocutors, articulates the challenge forcefully. Imagine possessing a ring that makes you invisible, the famous ring of Gyges. Would even a just person remain just if he could act without consequence? Glaucon suggests that justice is merely a social contract among the weak. People agree not to harm one another because they fear suffering harm themselves. Justice is not intrinsically good, it is a compromise. This argument remains powerful today. Much of modern political theory assumes that institutions function because incentives and penalties are structured correctly. Remove accountability, and corruption spreads. Plato refuses to accept this reduction. He seeks to demonstrate that justice is not merely externally imposed order, it is an internal harmony. Injustice, even if materially successful, damages the soul. The Republic, then, asks a profound psychological question. Is justice valuable in itself, or only as a strategy? Let us examine 5 central ideas that structure Plato's argument. Plato's most radical insight is that justice is not primarily about legal compliance. It is about harmony. He constructs an analogy between the city and the individual soul. The city contains 3 classes: rulers, guardians, and producers. The soul contains 3 parts: reason, spirit, and appetite. Reason seeks truth. Spirit seeks honor and recognition. Appetite seeks pleasure and material satisfaction. Justice occurs when reason governs, spirit supports reason, and appetite is moderated. Injustice occurs when appetite dominates, or when ambition overrides wisdom. Political disorder mirrors psychological disorder. A city driven by greed reflects souls ruled by appetite. A city consumed by anger reflects souls ruled by unchecked spirit. Justice is inner order projected outward. Perhaps the most controversial claim in the Republic is that philosophers should rule. Plato argues that governing is a form of knowledge. Just as medicine requires expertise, so too does political leadership. Popular acclaim is not equivalent to wisdom. The philosopher, in Plato's sense, is not merely an academic. He is one who seeks knowledge of the good, the highest standard of truth and value. Importantly, the philosopher does not desire power for its own sake. He governs reluctantly, out of responsibility. Plato's argument forces a difficult question. Should leadership be grounded in persuasion and popularity, or in knowledge and education? In Book 7, Plato presents the allegory of the cave. Prisoners are chained inside a cave, watching shadows cast upon a wall. They mistake these shadows for reality. One prisoner is freed and sees the world outside. When he returns to enlighten the others, they resist him. The cave represents ignorance. The shadows represent appearances mistaken for truth. In a world shaped by mass media, digital platforms, and curated narratives, this allegory feels uncannily modern. The danger is not merely falsehood, but the comfort of illusion. Education for Plato is not the passive reception of information. It is the reorientation of the soul toward truth. Plato devotes extraordinary attention to education. He insists that stories, music, and cultural narratives shape character long before reason develops. If citizens are poorly formed, no institutional design can compensate. This is why Plato controversially proposes regulating poetry and myth. He believes that culture molds the soul. Political order, therefore, depends on moral formation. Plato outlines a sequence of political decline: aristocracy, timocracy, oligarchy, democracy, and tyranny. Each regime corresponds to a dominant psychological type. In oligarchy, wealth becomes the central value. In democracy, freedom becomes unrestrained. In tyranny, fear replaces liberty. Plato does not deny the attractions of democracy, but he warns that excessive freedom, detached from discipline, can generate instability. Freedom without structure may undermine itself. Why does this ancient dialogue still resonate? First, Plato reminds us that political crises are often moral crises. Institutional design alone cannot sustain justice. Second, his emphasis on education anticipates contemporary debates about civic literacy, media responsibility, and cultural formation. What virtues are we cultivating? Third, the allegory of the cave offers a framework for understanding misinformation and ideological echo chambers. The struggle between appearance and reality is intensified by technology. Fourth, Plato's analysis of regime decline encourages structural reflection rather than partisan blame. He does not accuse factions. He examines tendencies within human psychology. Finally, his conception of justice as inner harmony challenges purely procedural politics. Democracy depends on citizens capable of self-governance. The Republic suggests that the health of a political system depends on the moral architecture of its people. The Republic is a monumental work, but it is not without serious criticisms. It integrates ethics, psychology, and politics into a unified vision. It treats education as foundational, rather than secondary. It challenges superficial conceptions of freedom. It insists that power without knowledge is dangerous. The philosopher-king model appears elitist and unrealistic. Plato's proposals for censorship raise concerns about intellectual freedom. His communal arrangements for guardians conflict with modern commitments to individuality and family autonomy. His critique of democracy may seem overly severe. Moreover, history provides little assurance that intellectual elites are immune to corruption. Yet many criticisms overlook Plato's method. The Republic is not a literal policy manual. It is a philosophical thought experiment. The city is a magnified image of the soul. Plato's aim is diagnostic, not legislative. The Republic concludes with the myth of a story of souls choosing their destinies after death. Justice shapes the trajectory of existence. Whether one interprets this myth literally or symbolically, its message is clear. Moral character has enduring consequences. We live in an era preoccupied with structural reform. We debate electoral systems, economic policy, regulatory frameworks. These discussions matter, but Plato would ask a prior question: what kind of souls sustain these systems? If citizens reward appearance over truth, appetite over reason, outrage over reflection, no institutional arrangement will secure stability. The Republic endures because it reminds us that political order is fragile. It depends not only on constitutions but on character. Perhaps the most challenging insight Plato offers is this: justice is not primarily enforced from outside, it must be cultivated within. And so we might end where Plato began, with a question. In an age of polarization, distraction, and moral uncertainty, are we forming citizens capable of self-rule? Or are we still watching shadows on the wall?